7 years after the infamous birthday invasion, humanity had done what humanity always did after surviving an extinction-level event. They stole the enemy's technology. Officially, it was called reverse engineering. Human scientists discovered that Dominion technology was built around neural pattern recognition, adaptive control, and bio-responsive interfaces. In plain English, alien machines learned from their operators. The Dominion had designed their vehicles to respond to disciplined, trained minds. Clear command intention, emotional regulation, hierarchical obedience. The captured systems had spent their first extended human exposure being operated by drunk Marines in dress blues. This changed things. Alien software, once elegant and precise, began adapting. One landing craft refused to start unless someone yelled "Ooh-rah" at it. A troop carrier's door chime changed itself to the opening bars of the Marine Corps hymn. A captured orbital shuttle developed what NASA described as a confrontational attitude. The shuttle would not respond to Air Force pilots. It ignored Navy aviators. It displayed rude warning symbols at Space Force technicians. One Dominion troop carrier began automatically locking its doors whenever it detected a second lieutenant holding a clipboard. Nobody changed that setting. Everyone agreed it was useful. The largest recovered landing craft developed what engineers described as selective obedience. For 6 months, it refused all formal activation codes. Then one morning, a Marine corporal walked past eating a gas station burrito. The hatch opened automatically. The corporal stopped chewing. "Is that good?" The scientists looked at each other. Nobody answered. A behavioral science team was assigned to determine why Marines could operate Dominion technology without formal training. Their findings were inconclusive. The first theory was that Marines possessed unique neural compatibility with alien systems. The second theory was that the alien systems were panic learning. The third theory was that Marines simply intimidated the machinery into cooperating. The third theory became more popular after a sergeant major stood in front of a malfunctioning alien engine and said, "Start." The engine started. A DARPA scientist whispered, "That should be impossible." The sergeant major turned slowly. "It heard me." After that, nobody made eye contact with the engine. The Dominion had arrived on Earth expecting a quick conquest. Instead, they discovered Jacksonville, North Carolina during Marine Corps birthday celebrations, which historians would later describe as the first interstellar military defeat caused primarily by drunk Marines, poor timing, and an unforgivable misunderstanding of human party culture. The aliens had come looking for prisoners. They found a hall full of Marines in dress blues getting violently patriotic on cheap beer. The result was not a battle, it was a warning label. Within a year, humanity had enough of an understanding of Dominion technology to leave the solar system. Within 3, human ships were pushing into neighboring sectors. Within 5, every alien civilization within radio range had developed an official policy regarding humans. Most of those policies included the words avoid, unpredictable, and do not challenge them to drink. The Marines, naturally, took this as a compliment. As humanity spread outward, they found other alien races. Some were peaceful, some were dangerous, some were so strange that even a Marine private, after staring at one through reinforced glass for 10 full seconds, had muttered, "I could never be that drunk." Diplomats called it humanity's interstellar expansion period. The Navy called it forward strategic presence, because apparently parking very expensive ships near nervous aliens needed a nicer title. The Army called it joint operational development, which meant they built a base, named every road after a dead general, and somehow still got lost on it. The Marines called it same misery, better scenery. This made sense. The Marine Corps had been born in a tavern, earned the nickname Devil Dogs through battlefield legend, and had spent centuries proving that if you gave a Marine an MRE, a rifle, and something to lean the heater against, preferably a rock or something, he would eventually either win the war or try to fight the rock. So when humanity reached the stars, the Marines did not see alien worlds as a grand new frontier. They saw fresh places to be cold, wet, hungry, angry, undersupplied, overtasked, and told by someone with clean boots that morale was high. And because the universe apparently had a sense of humor and a personal grudge against enlisted infantry, one Marine platoon eventually found itself stationed on a miserable red dust ball, officially named Carthon 4. The Marines called it Planet Nope. It was red, dusty, hot during the day, freezing at night, and covered in needle grass that could cut through uniform fabric, boot leather, and morale. The local insect life was aggressive, ugly, and apparently unionized because they attacked in coordinated shifts. Firebase Lunchbox sat in the middle of a dry alien valley between two ridgelines and one suspicious swamp that occasionally burped purple gas. Nobody trusted the swamp. Nobody trusted the planet. Nobody trusted the Chow Hall. At 1200 hours, the Marines of 2nd Platoon were seated inside the mess tent, eating what the cooks had described as beef-style nutritional stew. This caused immediate concern. Lance Corporal Briggs held his spoon over his tray and stared at the gray-brown lump sliding slowly through the gravy. "This cow died on another planet," he said. Corporal Diaz leaned over and sniffed it. "That was never a cow." Private First Class Kowalski was already on his second bowl. Briggs stared at him. "You're eating that?" Kowalski nodded. "I've eaten worse." "When?" "Boot camp." Diaz looked offended. Boot camp food was better than this. Kowalski shrugged. Boot camp food had fear in it. Fear adds flavor. Across the table, Sergeant Malone ate in silence the way experienced Marines ate. Quickly, suspiciously, and with the haunted expression of a man who knew Chow could be interrupted at any moment by weather, officers, enemy contact, inspections, or the phrase working party. Lieutenant Harris entered the Chow Hall carrying a clipboard, which immediately lowered morale across the entire tent. Every Marine saw it. Every Marine pretended not to. A clipboard meant nothing good. A clipboard meant accountability. A clipboard meant someone had invented a task and was looking for victims. The lieutenant cleared his throat. "After lunch, we'll need 6 volunteers to assist with reorganizing the supply." 30 Marines immediately began chewing slower. One Marine pretended to choke. Another closed his eyes and lowered his head like he had suddenly found religion. Sergeant Malone looked up. "Sir, with respect, if you say volunteers while holding a clipboard, that's legally kidnapping." The lieutenant frowned. "That is not accurate." Diaz muttered, "Tell that to my last 3 Saturdays." At the end of the tent, Lance Corporal Miller stood abruptly, pale and sweating. Briggs looked at him. "You good?" Miller gripped the edge of the table. "I trusted the dessert." The entire table went quiet. Diaz lowered his spoon. "You ate the pudding?" Miller nodded once. Kowalski whispered, "Godspeed." Miller started moving toward the latrines with the careful, stiff-legged walk of a man transporting a live grenade inside his own body. Sergeant Malone watched him go. "Take your rifle." Miller stopped. "Sergeant, I'm going to the toilet." Malone kept eating. "This planet hates us. Take your rifle." Miller sighed, grabbed his weapon, and continued his tragic march. That decision would later become part of Marine Corps history. High above Firebase Lunchbox, hidden behind the glare of Carthon 4's miserable sun, the alien invasion force waited. The aliens called themselves the Jacari Dominion, which sounded impressive until translated literally, where it became something close to the people who are correct about everything. They were tall, silver-armored, highly intelligent, and extremely dramatic. Their commanders wore flowing capes over sealed combat armor, which suggested either supreme confidence or a civilization that had never dealt with hydraulic doors, jet engines, or escalators. Their leader, High Strategist Vraxalon of the Ninth Conquest Wing stood aboard a hovering command skiff and observed the human outpost through a crystal targeting display. He had studied humanity for almost 12 hours. He considered himself an expert. "Observe them," Vraxalon said, pointing one long claw at the display. "The humans are gathered together in a feeding enclosure. Their weapons are not in their hands. Their attention is divided. Their bodies are processing nutrients." His second-in-command, sub-strategist Elrix, tilted his helmet. An ideal moment to strike. "Exactly," Vraxalon said. "All species are weakest during feeding." Elrix zoomed in. One Marine was dipping bread into gravy in between cleaning carbon off a rifle bolt. Another had hot sauce, instant coffee, and ammunition on the same tray. A third was attempting to eat mashed potatoes with a combat knife. Elrix hesitated. "Commander, their feeding ritual appears militarized." Vraxalon waved this away. "Primitive species often cling to tools for comfort. They are vulnerable." On the screen, Kowalski looked directly upward, as if sensing judgment from orbit, and shoved another spoonful of stew into his mouth. Elrix leaned closer. "That one appears to be consuming food with hostility." "Enough," Vraxalon snapped. "Begin the assault." Alien dropships descended through the thin red clouds. The invasion had begun. The first alien mortar hit just outside the Chow hall. The mess tent jumped. Dust rained from the ceiling. Someone's drink launched into the air and landed perfectly inside Lieutenant Harris's helmet. The lieutenant looked down at it. Everyone else looked at him. No one said anything. Then a second explosion hit the motor pool. The base alarm began screaming. A voice over the loudspeaker shouted, "Contact! Contact! North Ridge!" Sergeant Malone slowly set his spoon down. His face changed. It went from tired Marine to very tired Marine who now had permission to make someone else's day worse. He stood. "Everybody up." The Chow hall erupted. Chairs fell backward. Trays crashed. Rifles were grabbed. Helmets were jammed on. Body armor was half-fastened, wrongly fastened, or carried under one arm, while Marines ran toward the exits. Kowalski picked up his rifle, helmet, and tray. Diaz saw him. "Why are you bringing your tray?" Kowalski looked offended. "Because I waited in line." "Bro, we are under attack." "Exactly. I might not get seconds." Briggs shoved magazines into his vest. "The aliens picked lunch?" Sergeant Malone chambered around. "Apparently." Diaz grinned. "That's disrespectful." Malone threw open the tent flap. "Let's go explain cultural sensitivity." Outside, the valley had become chaos. Alien dropships hovered over the ridgeline, unloading squads of silver-armored soldiers. Their weapons glowed blue, their banners snapped in the dust storm. Their formation was perfect. They looked terrifying. They looked disciplined. They looked like they had rehearsed. The Marines looked like they had just been attacked halfway through a meal they already hated. This was worse, much worse. A plasma bolt struck the Chow Hall sign, burning the words, "Today's special," stew into molten slag. Briggs froze. "They shot the menu." Diaz looked at the burning sign. "Honestly, that might be a mercy killing." A nearby alien fire team advanced with shields raised. Their squad leader barked something in a sharp alien language. The translator drone hovering above them converted it into English. "Submit, primitive warriors. Your consumption period is over." Every Marine within earshot stopped. Sergeant Malone slowly turned. "What did that thing just say?" The drone repeated, "Your consumption period is over." Kowalski's eyes narrowed. "My lunch break is not over until I say it's over." Then the Marines opened fire. The alien shield wall flashed bright blue under the impact. For 3 seconds, it held. Then Briggs hit it with a grenade launcher. The shield collapsed. The alien squad disappeared in a cloud of smoke, sparks, and poor decision-making. Diaz yelled, "Welcome to the planet, nerds!" Lieutenant Harris tried to establish order. First squad, secure the motor pool. Second squad, cover the north berm. Third squad... A plasma bolt hit the ground beside him, throwing red dirt over his uniform. He looked down at himself, then back at the aliens, then at Sergeant Malone. Sergeant, I believe they are attempting to kill us. Malone nodded. Yes, sir. I had detected that trend. Meanwhile, Lance Corporal Miller was inside the Porta-John, fighting a battle far more personal than the one outside. The unit was a narrow metal box bolted to the ground behind the barracks. It contained one toilet, one cracked mirror, one sink that only produced water if insulted properly, and a ventilation fan that made a noise like a dying lawnmower. Miller sat on the toilet with his rifle leaning against the wall. His trousers were around his ankles. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Outside, explosions shook the building. He stared at the locked door. No, he said firmly. No, no, no. We are not doing this today. A nearby blast knocked the toilet paper roll off its holder. Miller caught it on instinct. That was muscle memory. That was training. That was the Marine Corps. The radio clipped to his vest crackled from the floor. Contact North Ridge. Multiple enemy squads inside the wire. Miller closed his eyes. Inside the wire. Another explosion shook the Porta-John. The light flickered. Something outside screamed in an alien language. Miller looked down at himself, then at his rifle, then at the door. Of course, he muttered. Of course. I'm going to die with my pants down on Planet Nope. He reached for the rifle. At that exact moment, the door blasted inward. 3 alien scouts stood outside. They were elite infiltrators of the Jacari Dominion. They had trained from birth. They had mastered stealth, close-quarters combat, and psychological warfare. They had never breached a toilet before. The lead alien stepped in, weapon raised. Miller looked at it. The alien looked at Miller. There was a silence that belonged in no official report. Miller shouted the only thing that came to mind. Bro, occupied! The alien hesitated. That hesitation saved humanity. Miller threw the toilet paper roll directly into the alien's face. The alien shrieked and stumbled backward, arms flailing, completely unprepared for two-ply combat. Miller grabbed his rifle while still seated and fired through the doorway. The first alien dropped. The second alien tried to return fire, slipped on the fallen toilet paper, and fell into the third alien. Miller kicked the door fully open and kept shooting. Outside, Corporal Diaz heard the gunfire from behind the sanitation block. Miller! Miller shouted back, I'm busy! Are you hit? Emotionally! Diaz rounded the corner and saw 2 dead aliens outside the toilet unit, one wounded alien trying to crawl away, and Miller sitting inside with a rifle, toilet paper draped across one shoulder like a ceremonial sash. Diaz stared. Miller stared back. Diaz slowly raised one thumb. Good work. Miller pointed his rifle at him. Tell no one. Diaz nodded. Absolutely. Then he turned and yelled at the top of his lungs. Miller just smoked 3 aliens from the Porta-John. A cheer went up from somewhere near the barracks. Back at the North Berm, the alien assault was becoming a case study in cultural misunderstanding. The Jacari had expected humans to respond to surprise with panic. Instead, the Marines responded with insulted aggression and poor volume control. A squad of aliens advanced behind a floating energy barrier. Briggs took cover behind an ammunition crate. Sergeant, they've got a shield. Malone nodded. Shoot the shield. We are shooting the shield. Shoot it disrespectfully. Briggs considered this, then loaded a grenade. Understood. The grenade hit the shield and exploded. The energy barrier flickered. Diaz followed up by throwing his empty metal chow tray like a discus. It bounced off the weakened shield, ricocheted into the alien squad leader's helmet, and knocked him flat. Everyone paused. Diaz looked at the tray lying in the dust, then at the unconscious alien, then back at the Marines. I have discovered a new weapon system. Kowalski immediately threw his tray, too. He missed the aliens completely and hit a generator. The generator sparked, exploded, and disabled an alien drone. Kowalski nodded. Still counts. A drone swooped low, scanning the battlefield. Its translator emitted a calm warning. "Human combatants, surrender is statistically advisable." Briggs shot it. The drone spiraled into the dirt. Briggs yelled, "Advise that!" High Strategist Vraxalon watched the battle from his now damaged command skiff and grew increasingly concerned. His first wave had breached the wire, then the humans became louder. His second wave had deployed shock drones. The humans stole one. His elite infiltration team had entered the rear of the base. Now their vital signs had disappeared near a sanitation structure, which Vraxalon decided not to think about. Sub-strategist Elrix studied the tactical display. "Commander, our forces are experiencing unexpected resistance." Vraxalon glared. "They are a primitive species using chemically propelled projectile weapons." "Yes, Commander." "They should be afraid." "Yes, Commander." "They should be disoriented." "Yes, Commander." "They should not be using food trays as anti-personnel devices." "No, Commander." On the screen, Sergeant Malone was seen beating an alien sensor pod with a coffee urn. Elrix leaned in. "Is that a religious object?" Vraxalon watched the coffee urn smash through alien equipment. "I think it is, Commander." Another officer called from the rear station. "Commander, we have intercepted human communications." "Play them." The bridge speakers crackled. A Marine voice shouted, "Who took my hot sauce?" Another replied, "The aliens blew up your table, man." "Then I'm taking their ship." The alien bridge fell silent. Elrix turned slowly toward Vraxalon. "Commander, they appear motivated by condiments." Vraxalon closed his eyes and shook his head. "Deploy the heavy walker." The heavy walker descended from a dropship like a metal nightmare. It was 3 stories tall with 6 legs, 2 plasma cannons, a missile pod, black armor, and the kind of ominous hum that made insurance companies abandon entire continents. It landed outside the motor pool and blasted a crater into the ground. The Marines looked up. For 1 second, even they were impressed. Briggs lowered his rifle. "That's new." Diaz whistled. "That thing looks expensive." Sergeant Malone squinted at it. "Not for long." The walker's speakers boomed, "Primitive defenders, behold the instrument of your extinction." The Marines stared. Kowalski raised his hand. "Question." The alien walker paused, perhaps because no species had ever asked a question during an extinction announcement. Kowalski pointed at the machine. "Does that thing have cup holders?" The walker fired. The Marines scattered. A plasma blast vaporized the spot where Kowalski had been standing. He rolled behind a pile of supply crates, still clutching a spoon. Diaz landed beside him. "You still have the spoon?" Kowalski looked at it. "I panicked!" Briggs crawled up beside Sergeant Malone. "How do we kill it?" Malone studied the walker. "Same way we kill everything." "With violence?" "With teamwork." Briggs waited. Malone added, "and violence." The Marines split into fire teams. One group kept the walker busy with rifle and machine gun fire. Another moved through the smoke toward the motor pool. Lieutenant Harris radioed for anti-armor weapons while trying to maintain a professional tone despite still smelling like gravy. "Command, this is Lunchbox Actual. Enemy heavy walker inside the wire. Requesting immediate support." The radio crackled. "Lunchbox Actual, say again. Did you say heavy walker?" Harris ducked as plasma fire tore through a nearby crate. "Affirmative. Can you classify type?" Harris watched the walker step on the Chow Hall's water heater. "It is large, hostile, and has terrible manners." Meanwhile, Diaz and Briggs reached the weapons locker. Briggs opened it. Inside were 2 rockets, a launcher, 1 broken tripod, 3 mystery cables, and a label reading "Property of someone who will be angry if this is missing." Diaz grabbed a rocket launcher. "Think this works?" Briggs shrugged. "It's either going to kill the walker or make maintenance someone else's problem." They ran back into the fight. The walker turned its cannons toward the barracks. Before it could fire, a voice shouted from behind the sanitation unit, "Hey!" The walker rotated. Lance Corporal Miller stood there, now fully dressed but emotionally changed forever. In one hand, he held his rifle. In the other, he held a toilet plunger. Nobody knew where he got it. Nobody asked. Miller pointed the plunger at the walker. "You interrupted something sacred." Diaz looked at Briggs. "Is he okay?" Briggs shook his head. "No, but he's become powerful." The walker's targeting system focused on Miller. That was when Diaz fired the rocket into its knee joint. The explosion blew one leg apart. The walker stumbled. Briggs fired the second rocket into its side. The armor cracked open. Kowalski, seeing opportunity and lacking judgment, sprinted toward the damaged machine. Sergeant Malone yelled, "Kowalski, what are you doing?" Kowalski yelled back, "Marine things!" He climbed the walker's damaged leg, pulled a grenade from his vest, jammed it into the cracked armor, and slapped the machine twice. "Bad robot!" Then he jumped. The grenade exploded. The walker collapsed backward into the dirt with a thunderous crash, crushing 3 alien hoverbikes and 1 extremely unlucky alien officer. The Marines cheered. Kowalski made it back, covered in dust. Diaz ran over. "That was insane." Kowalski nodded. "I saw a weak point." "You saw a hole." "Same thing." The battle turned after that. The aliens had started the fight with perfect timing, advanced technology, and overwhelming confidence. The Marines had started the fight annoyed, underfed, and halfway through complaining about stew. The aliens could not adapt to this. Every Jacquari tactical model assumed an enemy would try to preserve life, equipment, and dignity. The Marines seemed selectively interested in the first one and completely indifferent to the other two. One alien squad tried to flank the barracks. They were ambushed by 3 Marines. One alien officer attempted to negotiate. Sergeant Malone told him negotiations would begin after lunch. The alien asked when lunch ended. Malone said, "When we run out of enemies." Another alien drone broadcast, "Humans, your resistance is irrational." Briggs shot it and yelled, "That's our brand." At the supply yard, 2 Marines found an abandoned alien hoverbike. One said, "We should secure this for intelligence." The other said, "We should jump it over the trench." They compromised by doing both. The hoverbike made it halfway over the trench, clipped a defensive barrier, flipped twice, and crashed into an alien mortar team. The Marine riding was flung off during the jump, stood and raised both arms. "Stuck the landing!" No one agreed, but the mortar team was gone, so nobody argued. High Strategist Vraxalon's command skiff was now smoking, tilting, and full of officers making frightened clicking sounds. The battle map had become a disaster. Red markers, representing his elite assault units, were disappearing across the base. Blue markers, representing the humans, were moving unpredictably. One blue marker was inside the sanitation block and had somehow been upgraded by the system from infantry to unknown threat. Vraxalon jabbed at the display. "What is this one?" Elrix checked the data. "That is the human from the waste chamber." "Why is he marked unknown threat?" "The system reclassified him after he eliminated our scout team while partially immobilized." Vraxalon stared. "Partially immobilized?" Elrix hesitated. "By his own garments." The bridge fell silent again. Vraxalon looked out over the battlefield. He saw Marines firing from behind overturned tables. He saw one using an alien helmet as a soup bowl. He saw another trying to remove the plasma cannon from the destroyed walker while yelling, "Command said no souvenirs, but Command ain't here." Then he saw Miller. Miller had mounted the fallen walker and was using its remaining loudspeaker. His voice boomed across the battlefield. Attention, aliens! This is Lance Corporal Miller. You have violated the bathroom. Every Marine stopped for half a second. Then they erupted in laughter. Miller continued, "This is a war crime in spirit." The aliens did not understand the words, but they understood the tone. Vraxalon whispered, "What is happening?" Elrix answered honestly, "I believe we have attacked the wrong mammals." The final alien push came at 12:47 hours. It was supposed to be a glorious charge. The remaining Jakari shock troops formed ranks near the North Ridge. Their armor gleamed. Their commander raised a glowing blade. Their banners lifted in the red wind. It would have looked magnificent in a painting. Unfortunately, the Marines had found the base loudspeaker system. Lieutenant Harris tried to stop them. He failed. The loudspeakers crackled. Then, across the entire battlefield came the sound of someone badly humming the Marine Corps hymn, while another Marine yelled, "No, no, start it again! You're doing it wrong!" The alien charge faltered. Then the loudspeaker changed to Kowalski's voice. "This announcement is for the alien army. You have attacked us during Chow, damaged government property, interrupted bathroom operations, and destroyed several portions of stew that were technically edible." A pause. "Prepare to receive customer feedback." The Marines countercharged. They came over the berm through smoke and red dust, rifles firing, boots pounding, faces set in the ancient expression of infantry everywhere. Tired, angry, and personally offended. The alien line broke almost immediately. Some ran, some surrendered. Some tried to fly away using emergency jump packs, forgetting the planet's gravity was slightly higher than standard. They rose 15 feet, screamed, and dropped back down like armored lawn darts. Diaz watched one hit the dirt. "Gravity says no." Sergeant Malone advanced through the smoke and found High Strategist Vraxalon climbing from his crashed command skiff. The alien commander raised his hands. "I request honorable terms." Malone looked at him, then at the wrecked Chow Hall, then at Miller, who was standing nearby holding a plunger like a medieval mace, then back at Vraxalon. "You attacked us during lunch." Vraxalon straightened. "It was tactically optimal." Malone nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's the problem." Vraxalon looked confused. "Will I be executed?" Malone frowned. "What? No, we're not monsters." Vraxalon relaxed. Then Malone pointed toward the Chow Hall. "You're cleaning the mess tent." The alien commander recoiled. "I am High Strategist of the 9th Conquest Wing." Malone smiled. "Not anymore. Now you're on working party." Vraxalon looked to Elrix for help. Elrix had already surrendered and was wearing a captured apron that read, "Kiss the cook or fight him." By 1400 hours, the battle was over. The Marines had won. The aliens had lost 27 vehicles, 1 command skiff, 1 heavy walker, 6 drones, 3 banners, and their belief in predictable warfare. Firebase Lunchbox had lost a water heater, 2 tents, 1 generator, a suspicious quantity of mashed potatoes, and the last remaining illusion that Miller would ever live this down. The surviving aliens were gathered near the supply yard under guard. They looked traumatized. One pointed nervously toward the sanitation unit. A Marine guard nodded. "Yeah. Don't go in there." The alien immediately sat down. In the Chow Hall, repairs had already begun. By repairs, this mostly meant Marines had pushed debris away from the tables and continued eating around the holes. Lieutenant Harris stood before the platoon, holding a damaged clipboard. "Good work today. Despite being surprised, this unit responded quickly, decisively, and with..." He looked around. Kowalski was eating stew from an alien helmet. Diaz was trying to teach a captured drone to say "Ura." Briggs had labeled the destroyed Walker Miller's toilet taxi. Miller was sitting alone, staring into the middle distance. The lieutenant sighed. "With initiative." Sergeant Malone nodded. "That's one word for it, sir." Harris continued. "Officially, This engagement will be recorded as the defense of Firebase Lunchbox. Briggs raised a hand. Sir, can we call it the Battle of the Bathroom Breach? No. Kowalski raised his spoon. The Chow Hall Massacre? No. Diaz added, The Great Gravy War? No. A captured alien officer approached under guard and addressed Lieutenant Harris. Human Commander, we request clarification. Harris looked at him. Go ahead. The alien gestured toward the Marines. Your troops were surprised, disorganized, and engaged in feeding. Why did this not reduce combat effectiveness? Harris thought about that. Then he looked at Sergeant Malone. Malone answered, Because Marines are only happy when they're miserable. The alien blinked. That is biologically contradictory. Diaz nodded. Welcome to the Corps. The alien pointed toward Miller. And that one? Everyone turned. Miller slowly looked up. The alien shuddered. That one fought from a waste throne. Kowalski whispered, Waste throne. Briggs immediately wrote it down. Miller closed his eyes, smiled, and shook his head. By sunset, Lance Corporal Miller had acquired 4 new nicknames: the Porcelain Punisher, the Latrine Reaper, the Duke of Number 2, and worst of all, Skidmark 6. That evening, High Strategist Vraxalon was forced to transmit a report to the Jakari High Council. He stood in front of the repaired command transmitter wearing a Marine-issued reflective safety belt, because Sergeant Malone had decided all prisoners on working party required proper visibility. Vraxalon hated the belt more than captivity. The transmission connected. The High Council appeared in shimmering blue holograms. One elder leaned forward. Strategist Vraxalon, report. Was the human outpost captured? Vraxalon swallowed. No, Honored Council. Was their command structure destroyed? No. Were their feeding rituals successfully disrupted? Vraxalon looked behind him. Inside the Chow Hall, Kowalski raised a spoon at him. No. The council murmured. Another elder asked, What caused the failure? Vraxalon stood straighter. The humans were more dangerous than expected. The council elder scoffed. They are infantry mammals. Yes. With primitive projectile weapons. Yes. Attacked during feeding. Yes. And still you failed? Vraxalon hesitated, then decided the truth was safer than trying to explain dignity. They became angry. The council stared. They were already consuming poor-quality nutrients. Our assault caused them to blame us for the interruption. Their combat effectiveness increased. One elder looked confused. Poor-quality nutrients improved their aggression? Yes. Explain. Vraxalon looked haunted. I cannot. Another elder asked, What of their sanitation structures? Our sensors show significant troop losses there. Vraxalon went silent. The council waited. Vraxalon finally said, very quietly, Do not enter them. The council chamber fell still. Repeat that. Do not enter human sanitation structures. Why? Vraxalon looked toward Miller, who was walking past with a coffee cup and the dead-eyed stare of a man who had become folklore against his will. Because some doors should remain closed. The next morning, the Marines held an informal awards ceremony. It was not authorized, it was not dignified. Sergeant Malone stood on an ammunition crate outside the Chow Hall. Gather round. The platoon formed a loose semicircle. Lieutenant Harris stood nearby, pretending he could stop whatever was about to happen. He could not. Malone held up a bent alien medal. We recovered this from the enemy commander. Since it looks important and nobody can read it, we are repurposing it. He turned to Miller. Lance Corporal Miller, front and center. Miller looked deeply unhappy. No, Sergeant. That was not a request. Miller walked forward while the platoon made dramatic humming noises. Malone placed the alien medal around his neck. For extraordinary courage under fire, while under extreme personal circumstances, and while conducting operations from a fixed, seated position, you are hereby awarded the unofficial, unauthorized, and deeply inappropriate Order of the Golden Toilet Seat. The platoon cheered. Miller stared at Malone. I will remember this betrayal. Malone nodded solemnly. That's fair. Kowalski stepped forward holding a covered tray. And because no hero should go hungry. He lifted the lid. It was more pudding. Miller looked at it, then looked at Kowalski. If you come near me with that, I'll defect to the aliens. One of the captured aliens overheard and panicked. We do not accept him! The Marines burst out laughing. Even Lieutenant Harris smiled. A little. Then the base alarm chirped. Everyone froze. A radar operator sprinted over. Sir, movement on long-range scan. The Marines grabbed weapons. The captured aliens looked terrified. Lieutenant Harris ran to the command post. What is it? The radar operator checked the screen. Looks like enemy fleet assets breaking orbit. Harris frowned. They're retreating? Yes, sir. All of them. Outside, the Marines looked up. Tiny lights rose from the far horizon as the remaining alien ships fled Carthon 4. A cheer rolled across Firebase lunchbox. Kowalski lifted his bowl. Cowards! Diaz patted the destroyed walker. They didn't even stay for breakfast. Miller looked relieved. Then Sergeant Malone clapped him on the shoulder. Cheer up, Miller. You're probably famous across their whole empire now. Miller went pale. 1 month later, intercepted Jacari military doctrine confirmed the psychological impact of the battle. A new section had been added to their invasion manuals. Warning. Human Marines. Do not attack during feeding periods. Do not damage food, even if food appears inedible. Do not assume shouting indicates panic. It may indicate enthusiasm. Do not interpret poor grooming, bad jokes, or visible exhaustion as weakness. Do not touch the coffee. Do not enter sanitation structures under any circumstance. If a human Marine says, "Hold my drink," retreat immediately. If the Marine is smiling, retreat faster. If the Marine is not smiling, it may already be too late. If the Marine is named Miller, surrender. Back at Firebase Lunchbox, the Marines heard about the doctrine and took it with professional humility, which meant they printed it on T-shirts. Miller's shirt read, Galactic Sanitation Incident Response Team. He refused to wear it. So naturally, everyone else did. The Chow Hall was eventually rebuilt. The stew was replaced by something called meat-adjacent pasta, which caused immediate suspicion. The destroyed walker was dragged to the front gate and turned into a sign. Someone painted across it, "Welcome to Firebase Lunchbox." Underneath, in smaller letters, Briggs added, "Bathrooms defended by appointment only." Lieutenant Harris ordered it removed. Sergeant Malone said maintenance was backed up. Maintenance said they needed parts. Supply said the parts were on order. The sign remained forever. And whenever new Marines arrived on Carthon 4, they were told the story during their first meal. How the aliens came during Chow. How the Marines fought, angry, hungry, and offended. How Kowalski tried to finish lunch during a firefight. How Diaz weaponized a tray. How Briggs insulted an empire. How Sergeant Malone turned an alien commander into working party labor. And how Lance Corporal Miller, alone in mankind's darkest hour, defended democracy, dignity, and one extremely vulnerable bathroom break. Miller always denied the details. The platoon always made them worse. By the end of the first year, the official legend claimed he had defeated 12 aliens, captured a command skiff, and personally declared the toilet an independent sovereign nation. Miller objected. Nobody cared. Because the Marines had won. The aliens had fled. The Chow was still terrible. And somewhere deep in Jacari space, alien recruits sat in classrooms, staring in horror at a training slide showing one blurry image of Lance Corporal Miller emerging from a sanitation unit with a rifle in one hand, a toilet plunger in the other, and toilet paper over his shoulder. The instructor would point at the image and say, "This is a human Marine." The recruits would shudder. The instructor would continue. This one was interrupted during something personal, and that was usually when half the class requested transfer to the Navy. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe to stay up to date with new stories.